Howdy team, happy Thursday. I hope you guys are doing great. I'm standing in front of the weight room. I was gonna film this inside the weight room and show off some of my Samson skills, but as you can see, it's busy in there. In fact, it's been busy all summer long. The Lord keeps growing the sports ministry here at the church. And so let this be a reminder to you to pray for Katrina and her team. The Lord continues to give us great avenues into the community. With TAFA now on campus, we've already had several new families join the gym. Several families are talking about testing out our church. Basketball season is going to be around the corner. God just keeps bringing us. Excel's taking off. God keeps bringing us as people. So pray for what happens in the LC and, of course, over in Building 1 during the week, too. Now, we're talking about Samson this week, and I'm pretty excited about that because I love Samson's story. Although Samson's story, it's not a pretty story. I think maybe it's because I'm a guy, I don't know, but I've always been fascinated by Samson's story. Certainly as a little boy, I was fascinated with Samson's story. Something about a dude that can win all the battles and do all these incredible things, like that's just pretty appealing. That's actually kind of why we watch movies, right? In fact, I always wanted someone to make a Samson movie, and when they finally made one, it wasn't very good. But the thing about it that wasn't very good was specifically they whitewashed Samson's sinful side. And Samson had a very sinful side. So let me say that right at the gate. Don't hide that. Part of the point of this message is to point out that God uses flawed humans, which, by the way, is all of us. That's important for us to hear. In fact, the people in your class that feel like they're so flawed they can't be used, Samson can be looked at as a hero of sorts. We'll talk about that towards the end of this thing. But point that out. Now, let's start off with the sin of lust. That was probably Samson's biggest issue. Samson just lusted all the time. And lust that goes unchecked will always lead to more sin. We got to know that. That's essential for us to believe and really press into for one another. And by the way, that's not just a male sin. That's for males and females. There are plenty of females who lust. Female lust sometimes looks different, but either way, it's the same thing. You are stealing visually that which does not belong to you. That's where lust starts, but it doesn't end there if it's not checked. Frequently, lust leads to physical sins, and that's where we find Samson, right? He goes from being a guy who early on in his life looks at a woman and says, she looks good to me, go get her for me, to when we find him towards the end of his life, he's living with a prostitute from the nation that he's supposed to be fighting against. This is what sin that goes unchecked does to our hearts, certainly lust. But that's not the only one. We also see how sin clouds our judgment in relation to arrogance. That was really, actually, let me back up. All sin clouds our judgment, but certainly lust and dare I say, even more so arrogance. That was Samson's other big issue. And the best way I can show you that plays out is thinking about this scenario. Delilah comes to him and she says, hey, how do I destroy you? And instead of him saying, I'm not going to tell you that, or what does it matter? He says to her a lie, and then she tries to destroy him. She uses the information against him. Any person in their right mind would have run away at that point. But I want to point out to you, he never should have been there in the first place. And that's where his sin led to him. That's where his clouded judgment led him. See, the thing about sin is it spiritually blinds us. And when we're spiritually blind, the scary part about it is we don't realize that we've become blind. That's why we need each other so much. And this is where I would point out too, Samson's family was trying to tell him the truth, but he just wasn't hearing them. It really is important for us to have other people in our lives besides just our family. We should listen to our parents. We should listen to our physical brothers and sisters. But when we're not, our spiritual brothers and sisters, the family of God, can step up and speak truth into our lives in a way that sometimes other can't. Had someone done that for Samson, we may have gotten a very, very different story. But that's now how it played out. We do want to point out the graciousness of this story, though. God still used Samson. Despite him breaking all 3 points of the Nazaritic vow, God still used him. You've got to point out, this is essential, even though chapter 16 says that Samson's hair began to grow back, that is not why he had strength. He had strength because of God's power in his life. In fact, I love that the message points out, nowhere does the scriptures tell us that Samson looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He might have looked more like me. And I kind of hope that he did, right? He was a human that was granted divine power from God. And at the end of his life, after he prays and he asks God to use him, God does. Guys, that's grace, insurmountable, incredible grace. So I say again, point out to people who feel like they have failed beyond the point of being used. That's not true. God, in his graciousness and his mercy, will use us to advance his kingdom and accomplish his purposes. And that's a beautiful thing. So celebrate that this weekend. Guys, we love you. Hope to see you soon. And if you ever want to see me in the weight room, by all means, come work out with me sometime. Bye-bye.